You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Keith Johnson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is AfterBuzz TV's Reign After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AfterBuzz TV's Reign After Show.
Kind of let the song play. It's so good. Hey everybody, we are here doing another after show for Reign. I know I've been gone for a couple weeks, but my name is Keetin Marchi, and with me in the booth is my lovely Phil. You guys.
Hello everybody, I'm excited to be here. Fania couldn't be here tonight, but I'm excited. Finally, next Thursday, I think we're going to get the band together and we're going to get these, we're finally going to be a think tank.
Yes, which will be exciting. It's just we've all been running around crazy, but, you know, I freaking love this song, and during the beginning, the opening this week on the episode, I paused it because I was like, oh, it's by the Lumineers, because it kind of comes up and shows it's called Scotland, and it's by the Lumineers, so fun fact if you didn't know that already. But let's just jump right into it. It's Hearts and Minds, episode 5. And this episode opens up kind of with tensions high between Tomas and Prince Francis. And they're kind of showing off a little, I don't know, Phil, do you think it's like they're kind of showing off their manhood with the bow and arrow contest? Or what did you kind of feel about that scene?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, in terms of Francis, he's still, remember from last time, kind of questioning where he stands. You know, he had a bad episode last week in terms of all the, you know, he lost to his father, he lost out on Mary and things like that. And so, you know, I think slowly but surely he's trying to rebuild himself, and you know, ultimately he gets the victory in tonight's episode. But
yeah, and I think you can just see kind of how self-conscious he is, and it came up a couple times throughout this episode of just how a lot people really don't have much faith in him. And you know, true to history, he was known for being sickly and weak, and people didn't have that much faith in him. So it's kind of cool that they're spinning off of that actual fact. But it's kind of fun to see him against his character Tomas, because Tomas of Portugal, he is so manly. He seems so much older than him, so much kind of like rough around the edges. Where Francis kind of looks like a little boy when they're like up against each other.
it's true, and you know, and also just even for me, learning from tonight's episode, you know, Francis doesn't have the ability to switch on and off and be as political yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas his counterpart, you know, last episode he was all sweet and innocent and nice, and all of a sudden that goes, you know, that switches, and now, you know, he's bringing out the whipping boys and everything like that, and, you know, now you're going to listen to me, and obviously we find out the true motives behind him, but he's able to play those various things, whereas Francis is just that he's innocent young Francis, and he has a good heart.
Mm-hmm. And still in the beginning of this episode, we saw that Tomas did kind of make a show of his new engagement with Mary, even though it hasn't been officially accepted by the King Henry of France. He shoots the arrow, and then he presents a rose to Mary in front of everybody, which I felt was very rude, but obviously it was meant to be very rude. It was meant to kind of be a rubbing in your face. But even Mary that was kind of her first distaste of him, of like, wait, this guy isn't as charming and as nice as, you know, he seems. Because that was not, even though that was a charming move towards him, it wasn't that sweet to do that in front of Francis, who she really still loves and respects.
You know, it was interesting to me, I kind of talk about this, you know, in terms of the women having power. And it's interesting that tonight they referred to pretty much all the women, including Mary, as property, you know,
yeah.
As he says to him later on, you know, she's my property and I'll do what I want with her. And so even someone as high up as a queen is still viewed very negatively in this world. And it's just that it's as much as last week, Fania and I were talking about in terms of the women trying to rise up. So are the men in whatever fashion they can, and it's land, property, or money, and this will get them there.
Yeah. And I mean, and it was even funny because we kind of saw a little bit of that, like with Mary, when her uncle pulls her aside at that very beginning, kind of scolds her for the whole situation that's happening. And obviously they're not going to send Mary, even though she is the Queen of Scotland. They won't send her there without a male advisor. And obviously Elizabeth I hasn't happened yet, so they haven't really had a major female queen during this era. But it's very sad to me that that's kind of how it was. And I appreciate kind of CW showing that side of it. They're not kind of shying away from the feminists and stuff by showing that's how it was back then when it comes to the dealings with marriages and stuff. But so after we kind of see this, this whole show of manhood, Mary gets scolded. We cut to Bash, who, as we saw last week, got injured on his way to send troops to Scotland because of a tip-off to the English. And he's still not doing well. Nostradamus is trying to nurse him back to health. And in walks Miss Lola, our pretty friend who last time we really got a good look at her character. She was kind of in a fight with Mary because she was in love with this man and he was beheaded by the queen, even though he was innocent, just because they tried to blackmail him into taking away Mary's virginity by kind of raping her in the night to make her ineligible to be married to Prince Francis. So what did you feel about Lola and Bash? Do you think they have chemistry, Phil, or?
I think they certainly do. I mean, I loved his comment about, my medication. I forget what it exactly was, but my medication is supposed to heal me or make me happier. And, come on.
Yeah.
And so, hey, that's a great line, by the way, to tell a girl.
Bash is so much more suave than Francis. Is he older or younger? Do we know? I think he's younger.
I think he is. I think he's a little bit younger, but I do think in terms of dynamic, he certainly seems to be the older brother. Simply because, Francis, he's always kind of been more protected, right? He's not the bastard child, and whereas Bash, he seems more worldly. He
absolutely.
He knows his way around the forest. He knows how to get places and be quick about it, and knows combat really well, right? It wasn't up until last episode where, Henry and Francis have, they say they've never fought together. Well, why? Because, it seems like Francis wouldn't be able to keep up.
Yeah.
Whereas
well,
Bash could.
And Francis, I mean, Henry said, he can't fight Francis because he doesn't want to hurt his heir. Like that's
Exactly.
that's like kind of their money, because if his heir dies, then the throne will be moved to a different family, whoever the daughter married. So, and they don't want that to happen. And I don't think Catherine would ever let Bash be recognized as a crown prince.
Nope.
So we have kind of the Bash and Lola love thing that's going on throughout this episode. And of course, we can't forget our slutty friend, Kenna.
Okay, why do you call her slutty? Why you gotta throw that out there?
Okay, this is why. And especially after this episode, it really solidified my idea of thinking Kenna's kind of like a slut. Okay, obviously she's the most sexually charged and kind of sexually interested girl about all of them. I mean, in the pilot episode, she was one who's like, hey, you guys want to come watch the bedding ceremony with me, like through the windows? And she did have that controversial masturbation scene that they had to cut in half in the pilot. But I mean, come on, like all the other girls seem very like straight-laced and like, okay, I'm here, like my family told me I have to do this, I'm here for Mary and only for Mary, and I also need to find a husband that's good for me, but that's gonna move my family up. That's why they're here. Where Kenna, she's straight up said it this episode, I want to be your mistress to the king. Like mistress number 2. Like he already has one mistress, like that he sent off to Paris to go shopping, and you're like asking him, hey, I want to be your mistress number 2. I don't see how that is like something to aspire to be.
I don't think you aspire to be that. And certainly it makes her insubordinate. However, does it gain her a certain amount of power? By it affords her, certainly her, a good life. It would seem.
I mean, and obviously Queen Catherine, even though she doesn't treat Bash very well, she can't really do anything about Bash's mother, who the king recognizes as, like, she was there to actually meet Mary when she arrived. So, the life of a mistress is not that bad, I guess, but like, to just go straight up to him, like, she changed so quickly, I felt, from last week to being like, no, I can't sleep with you, like, I'm here to find a husband, to, yes, let me jump into bed with you. It just seemed almost too quick and very irrational.
Yeah. I don't know. I just like to me, this storyline just tends to be fun only because of the way they're courting each other, and the power plays involved. As Henry says, people here don't always show their emotion, and then what does he says something that Catherine always says, right?
Oh my gosh, I probably have it written down.
But as soon as he said that to her, of like, that we're not, patience is a weakness and things like that. Yeah. It's just funny to me how they're kind of applying these things, and they both want the same thing. But at the end of the day, it's still there's a power play involved, and I love how that's kind of affecting them. But I see their love for each other.
Yeah, I mean, and you can definitely, when she originally goes in there and he denies her and like, no, you need to go to Portugal, basically, I felt like he did that out of love. But it almost felt too fatherly to me. I think that's what's kind of creeping me out about it a little bit. It's just,
he is pretty much old enough to be her father.
Yeah, and he looks so much older than her too. They obviously have tons of chemistry, but like, as acting partners as well as, sexually, but there's something about it that just seems a little too paternal that that kind of makes me cringe every time they're either making out or about to make out. I don't know.
Well, for me, the thing that offsets it is that as much as he has the power, quote unquote, she's still able to change him slowly but surely. And that's what I love about it is, I like what the CW is doing. Yes, the women may not have ultimate power, but how they are manipulating these men is interesting to me, because in tonight, as she says to him, have a little patience, and because it shows, courage, wisdom, power, that's what, she didn't use the word sexy, but that's what's sexy. Not, impulse decisions and, chop off a man's head, this and that. Yeah.
It was interesting. And I feel like that move of her, like, going up to the king and being like, hey, pump the brakes a little bit, wait till your sons get back before you decide to just behead this man because Catherine is so urgently, like, wanting you to do it. I think that's kind of what tipped him back of being like, oh, maybe I do want to have this woman in my ear, and I do want to keep her around closer to me and allow her to be my mistress, because it was very quickly after that conversation that we just found her running into his bedchamber again, and, the deed is done.
Also, we talked about the earlier, episodes 1 and 2, that sort of execution, how impulsive that was, and so, I think he's kind of thinking about all these different things. Obviously there's, with his position, there's stress involved. So, patience might not be a bad thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, our last kind of little lover situation that's happening this episode was Greer and her lovely, is he the cook, or he's either the cook or the kind of the servant, but the man who she had her first kiss with last week, and his name escapes me right now, but
the man with the remember the prophecy foretold that she would fall in love with the man,
with the white mark on his face, or white something on his face, and at the very last scene of last week's episode we saw him rub his face with flour, and that is the man she is falling in love with, and I love them together. I think they're adorable. I think it really kind of makes her character a lot more interesting, that she has this internal struggle of, I'm in love with this man, but I'm not in love with, like, he has no title, he has no nothing, and I'm here basically, for my family. And she continually has to remind herself of that every time she's with him, and she reminds him that too. And then she goes and she sneaks him into the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I especially with CW shows, I mean, unfortunately, I'll admit, I've seen way too many of them. Thankfully to AfterBuzz, because of AfterBuzz. But they always have the masquerade ball. As, Gossip Girl was known for that. And so, although we didn't get it, I was talking about how we should maybe have a Halloween episode. Although we didn't get it, their kind of mini version of that. And,
yeah.
And so it worked well, obviously, for her strategy to just kind of sneak him in. He wasn't very discreet.
No, he wasn't. We should have a masquerade at AfterBuzz. We should have a Christmas masquerade or a holiday masquerade.
Perhaps we will.
I don't know. You guys stay tuned for maybe pictures of a holiday masquerade from AfterBuzz. So, Greer and the cook, we'll see. I feel like their relationship is gonna come out a lot more in, I think, next week's episode, because it's kind of a hot topic right now, and I think it's gonna get her in trouble with maybe other suitors in court.
Let me ask you this, in terms of that, is it just a subplot, just to, for girls to kind of keep interested, only because, it's a love relationship, and that would tie it in? Or, as you mentioned, will something bigger happen out of this and tie back more into the primary storyline? Because if they do that, I think that's going to be really neat.
Yeah,
to do.
That would be really, really cool. And I mean, and one of the things, I've been reading a couple blogs about Reign, and one of the things people are really frustrated about are about these these ladies in waiting, who obviously 3 of them are just kind of in these like loving relationships, or out of love, in love, whatever. And then there's the one girl with the braids, who I can't even remember her name because she doesn't really add much to the show yet. But their only storylines revolve around love stories. They have nothing else kind of going for them. And that's a little frustrating for me, like, watching it, being like, oh, so the only other, like, obviously Mary is a super strong character, and Queen Catherine's pretty awesome too, for 2 female leads. But those girls, I don't know, I feel like they have no substance right now. It's just about, oh, I'm in love with this guy, or I'm in love with this guy. It just, I don't know.
Well, you also don't, part of the thing is to depict it properly, you want those characters to be strong, but then you can't have the other ones be as strong, because it's not an accurate depiction,
Mm-hmm.
And it also sets up those people, because if all of the women were that strong, then it doesn't make what Mary is doing all the more significant.
Maybe, I don't think like strength is a thing. I think I would just like to see more, like, them having a different kind of storyline, like, that doesn't involve being in love with a man, or trying to get a man, or like being sad about a man dying. Like, if you look at all of those characters, that's every single thing that's ever been, like, every one of their lines has been about that, or about, Mary, I'm here for you, which, props to the girls. They all were like, we'll drop everything to go to Portugal with you if you leave for Portugal. And they have really been there for Mary when she's gone through kind of people trying to kill her.
Maybe as a man, it's just nice to watch a show where the women really want the men.
Oh, okay. See, this is why it's so good we have a guy here to talk about Reign with us, because that's a good opinion. Okay. Touche. I'll shut up about that. I still hope that, maybe their stories evolve in a bigger way. But obviously Mary is our main character, and especially this week, her struggle between Tomas and Francis. And, Tomas, he, as we said earlier, like, he was this, amazing Portugal prince kind of coming in on a white steed to save Mary and to save Scotland. And so quickly he turned into the biggest D-bag ever, like, to the point where I never knew whipping men were real things but he gets a whipping man for Mary, and he starts following her. He's stalking her around the castle. So when Mary goes off and kind of has her alone time with Francis to kind of, I felt like that scene or that idea of her going to the lake with him was almost like a, let's say goodbye. Let's kind of have let's get everything out there. And
well, what's funny to me is, you know, this true supervillain move would be to marry her, get what you want, then do what he did.
Yeah.
But he made the classic mistake where he did it too soon. It's true. Because I will applaud him on his strategy. You know, how suave was he last time? And, you know, he had us guessing here of like, wow, should Mary be with Francis? And Francis is nice, but this guy is nicer. And look at what he's providing.
Yeah.
And it's all too well and good. And obviously that came out to be the case.
Well, in my head, it was like Thomas was a man, Francis is a boy, and Mary is a queen. And even though she keeps saying she can't marry, you know, the man, she has to marry the country. The moment like Thomas got attached to a country, which he was a lie that we come to find out that he would not get, you know, looked at as a prince by the Pope until he married Mary. But he lied to Mary and said that he was going to be kind of given the prince title before he married her. I don't know, like, I fell for Thomas last week. He was just very, I don't know, Francis does seem kind of weak, and, you know, he can't make decisions. He can't convince his father to really do much, and Thomas was hot.
and for the first time you saw Mary, as much as it was about politics, for the first time ever, she was swept off her feet. You know,
yeah.
He took her to a place, you know, he was romantic about it. He said a bunch of nice lines, and, you know, whereas Francis, he's nice, and he's obviously trying to help her, whether or not she believes that 100%, you know, he was doing what Mary wanted, but he certainly wasn't showing affection.
Well, and it did kind of give Francis a swift kick in the butt to step up his game this week, because they had their little rendezvous next to the lake outside of the castle walls, and They kissed for not the first time, but it was kind of like a make out, like little heated. And we saw like how much sexual chemistry that Mary and Francis do have. I mean, they did grow up together, and props to these two actors, Adelaide Kane and Toby Regbo is how you say it, I think. But props to them, because they really make me believe that those two have grown up together, and they kind of had a brother-sister relationship, but then kind of had crushes on each other, and then were separated, and now we're back and hoping for the best, but they're still trying to, you know, fill the shoes of the titles that they have the best they can, and not get so kind of caught up in their love for each other. But I was so happy to see them kind of give in to their feelings this week. It really made me happy.
And you know, because it comes from a place of friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whereas with Thomas, it's just, wow. First, I mean, even if it was, let's say, love, which clearly is, and you know, because we were still questioning it, at best it was an infatuation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's nice to see that friendship kind of now blossoming.
Yeah, and I think Francis, even if Mary would have gone up to Portugal, Francis would always love Mary, and I think Francis would always want to look out for her. Even if she went off to Portugal and like left him and their alliance got broken, I felt like if he would have risen to become a king, he would have still looked out for Scotland, just because of the history that they have.
And you would, to me, what's most interesting about this, and what I love about this show, again, is the politics of it, where, you know, you have the fate of perhaps France, Scotland, and Portugal being fought in the woods with swords, and, you know, that aspect of it I love, and that's what keeps me on the edge of my seat of how is this going to get resolved, you know, when such things are at stake, but it's just, this is how it's coming about.
Yeah, and it's cool kind of how, well, not cool, but I liked how Thomas started unraveling in front of Mary and then in front of her friends, and then kind of started like losing it in front of Bash and Francis. Like, just very slowly, like he couldn't hold up this act anymore, to the point where like they all knew, like Francis and Bash were like, oh my gosh, he's the one who sent the spy to England to hurt Bash, which led us to this epic fight in the woods, which I loved. I thought that was such a well choreographed scene, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and I was not expecting, spoiler alert, Francis to kill Thomas, even though in his, like, he was freaking out that he did, but I think it was not only for Mary, but I felt like he did it for Bash, because the moment Thomas turned on Bash, that's when Francis was like, oh crap, because I feel like Bash usually would protect him, but now he didn't have Bash to protect him, so he had to do something drastic.
Oh, 100%. Knowing that that's why, Bash was in this predicament was because of him ratting on them. Yeah, all that emotion flies. And what I liked about Thomas was the fact that he just couldn't contain his greed for this power just a little bit longer until he was married again. And I joke about that, but that's what ultimately lost out.
I know. Thomas was too, and he trusted the wrong people as well, I think, because the people who he trusted, the prostitute and Miguel, I believe was his name, I think were a little sloppy about what they went about doing. So I feel like that's another reason why he kind of lost it. I'm happy Thomas and Mary aren't getting married. I'm not trying to say, oh, if only Thomas did it the right way, he could have gotten Scotland and, gotten married. But it definitely made it for an interesting episode that I really, really enjoyed and has been my favorite episode so far.
What I liked, before we move on to news and things like that, I really liked Simon's comment about this will be a moment in history that will be forgotten.
Oh my gosh, I wrote that down too, how I loved, because they're kind of poking fun at the fact that like they are basically taking the characters from history but not at all following history.
Yeah, and again, just kind of by putting in a TV show, just kind of creating its own mythos, and so thereby it has not been forgotten in history. Whether or not it's true, I don't, you know what I mean?
And
I liked it.
And I'm absolutely okay if they keep doing things like that. I think it's funny. It brings us back to reality, and it allows us to kind of laugh at the crazy soap opera that is Reign, and the Gossip Girl mixed with Game of Thrones action.
Great analogy.
And I love both those shows. So the moment I read that somebody related, I actually read that on E, that it was Gossip Girl meets Game of Thrones. And so thank you, E, for whoever came up with that, because it definitely is Reign in a nutshell. So do you wanna talk about anything else about the episode, or?
I'm all set. You're
all set? Okay, let's just jump in the news and gossip.
AfterBuzz TV News.
Okay, so I don't have that much news and gossip about our lovely actors and stuff, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the costumes that are being used throughout Reign. And obviously, they're beautiful costumes, and the wardrobe, everything, the aesthetics of the show are gorgeous. From where they film to what they put the actors in. Phil, I don't know if you're that into this stuff. I mean,
I'm not meticulous about it where I 100%, but I notice it, and I obviously it looks beautiful, and just even how Henry said tonight to Kenna, like, wow, you're covered up, and it gives me a moment of clarity. And so how even within the show they're able to play with that, and also Marion tonight, she was a hunter, and how that kind of was symbolic of something. So I do enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the costume designer Meredith Markworth Polak, who pulls these costumes and these dresses from designers, costume shops from Rome, and like different places around Europe, and she actually also designed some of the gorgeous dresses herself. But what's really cool that I thought is that some of the dresses actually are like pulled from like famous designers, and then they'll make something to go with it. For example, I don't know if you guys remember Mary's dress last week. I'll put a picture up on the AfterBuzz website. But when she is standing with Thomas, she has this dress on that is kind of black with this gold, almost military-looking jacket, and The jacket is actually an Alexander McQueen jacket, and then they made the skirt to match with it. And so it's just kind of cool and inspiring that this costume designer is pulling things from all different places and from all different time periods and not letting herself be kind of restricted by anything. But she does have a few rules when it comes to the costumes. She says no petticoats, no tights for men, and no hip rolls for women. So if you guys don't know what hip rolls are, they're those things that women wore during the Elizabethan times to kind of make their hips look bigger, which would make their waist look smaller. So definitely this costume designer is amazing, and I feel like in the future, I hope she wins some awards because, gosh, even though I don't like all the dresses, I love just how they all look. So next, we have kind of an idea of, things that are coming ahead on Reign. We are going to get to meet Mary of Guise, who is Mary's mother. And they just haven't found somebody to play her yet. So hopefully that is announced soon. It'll be interesting to kind of see. Obviously, Mary's a very strong woman, so to see if her mother was similar. We are also going to be meeting Elizabeth, who will become Elizabeth I. So that should be really fun as well. I love the Elizabeth series and any kind of story set in I don't know if you guys watch Showtime, the Tudors on Showtime, but one of my favorite shows for a while, and the other Boleyn Girl, which was great. And then, this was what's really exciting. Tell me how you feel about this, Phil. The chemistry between Bash and Mary they're planning on picking it up. So it's a slower burn, but
there's definitely some there.
I know, and it's gonna heat up more, so get excited for that. I knew the love triangle, I wanted it back between those three because I think just with the love that's all there, it's going to really mess things up and make it awesome and dramatic. And then, so Nostradamus is not planning on staying very monk-like either. So he's going to start getting on the action. So a lot of things to look forward to. The show, I feel like, is just going to get better. I can't wait.
Yes, indeed.
So, what do you want to jump into predictions?
Let's do it.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
You go first, Phil.
Ooh, me. I didn't get to see the previews, unfortunately, but I like how kind of, in some sort of weird way, we've kind of reset things. Mm-hmm. Now now Catherine has to kind of rethink her strategy because this was even though it wasn't her plan, it was a nice little play for her of, wow, get this girl out of here. And obviously that's gone. And Kenna and Henry, I like where that's going. Greer, we'll find out. I don't know. It's always so tough. But I do want to see, quote, the Ghost Girl. I want to see more of her. We kind of got away from that, and I'd like to see her.
We did, and let me just thank you for reminding me about Clarissa. How creepy was that last scene? Of they show Mary kind of talking down the hall to Clarissa, and then they show her get into bed, and then a pan down to basically the Scarecrow from Batman Begins laying under her bed. I jumped a little bit when I saw that, and I hope I don't have nightmares tonight about it, but that's really creepy.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that, but what about you?
Well, before I started, reading into some of the gossip and stuff, I was like, okay, Bash and Mary have to I need a spark to ignite between them again. And I feel like when that happens, Lola is going to get all hot and bothered by it again, obviously, because she felt like Mary, was the reason her first love was killed. So next week, I know you said you missed the preview for next week, but next week, a new girl comes to court who is new for Mary and her friends, but she's not new for everybody else at the French court. She apparently had left right before Mary had gotten there, but she was kind of Francis's love interest before Mary got there. So it's going to kind of throw a wrench in their newly happy life right now, which will be interesting. And they actually show during the preview that she asked Francis if she can just be his mistress. And it's like, that's kind of quick for like
That is quick.
he's not even the king yet, and you got women being like, "Can I be your mistress?"
Well, you want to secure it.
I guess so.
I want to see Charles too.
Yeah.
Because I think that was so much fun to see him with his girlfriend or whatever.
Mhm. I agree. I just want to meet. I hope we meet more people in court. Just because, like, how Gossip Girl kind of, as it continued, you know, you had the main characters, but, like, you got to know so many other ones who just would kind of put, like, you know, spin somebody's storyline out of control, which I would love. So, I don't know. I can't wait to meet this girl, and I wonder how Mary is going to react to her, because Mary is very diplomatic. So, tune in next week, guys. Phil, where can we find you?
You can find me here at AfterBuzz TV, and also, if you like movies, support a brand new venture called Anatomy of a Movie. That's Anatomy of a Movie. We dissect movies of all kinds. For those of you who like this podcast, we actually did Hocus Pocus. I figured you guys might enjoy that one. But we've done a plethora of other ones as well. Most recently, which one? Which one did we do? I forget.
Phil's looking at me like... The Hocus Pocus one is great, guys. And if you're a fan at all of the movie, tune in. It's so much fun.
And follow us here at AfterBuzz TV. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And we have a ton of other after shows. In fact, Keetin does a lot of them, too.
I do. You guys can find me, obviously, at AfterBuzz. Tune in to either Nashville, Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, which is right after this after show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, sometimes Once Upon a Time. But tune into any of the after shows that do all your favorite TV shows. But you can also find me on Twitter at KeatinM33 and on Instagram at Keatin33. Thanks for listening tonight, guys.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.